and he became a comedian.
Oh, wow.
He's really funny. I mean, he does a bit. I mean, most like religious comedians, especially Christians, when they're not funny, especially Mormons. I was at this Unitarian vegetarian dinner, and one of my friends who was putting on the dinner, she said, Mormons are not funny. But anyway, he calls himself Yamani Yamadas Brahmachari. And he's like a
Mhm.
really fixed up Prabhupada disciple, he goes out and distributes books, but he puts on this pseudo-European accent. And he actually, he sold a T-shirt. I bought it in 2015. He was running for president. He said, "Make America Krishna conscious again."
Yeah.
And so I would vote for him. But yeah, he was saying that the world is going to hell and hand glider.
Yeah.
He wouldn't say hand basket, he'd say hand glider.
Hmm.
I would have to actually I have to put subtitles, closed captioning in the videos that I made for him, but because it's very hard to understand his accent, even though it's put on. But he's funny as hell, man. But anyway, so yeah, it's disturbing what's going on. But Krishna is protecting us. I just read an article by Tom Hartman. You guys ever heard of Tom Hartman?
You know.
He's a he was actually friends with one of my spiritual master's friends. There's a Christian monk named B.D. Griffiths. When we were involved in the interfaith conferences and interfaith gatherings in New Vrindavan 30 years ago, B.D. Griffiths it befriended my guru, and he wrote a book called Heart of the Gita, which is a poeticized, like the Gita in rhyming couplets. It's beautiful. It's called the Heart of the Gita. But B.D. Griffiths was a Christian monk, and he went to India, and he had the idea of kind of blending into the culture. So he wore a dhoti and a kurta. He put on the Indian dress, even though he was a Christian monk. And so my spiritual master took that idea and reversed it. And we started wearing Christian robes
Mm.
back in the 90s. So he kind of flipped the thing. That was kind of controversial, but he was kicked out of ISKCON anyway, so it really didn't matter. He could do whatever he wanted. But yeah, we had some fantastic interfaith conferences back in the 90s. They especially like the when they had anything to do with chanting. It was great. There all the traditions in the world. They do have some kind of chanting. Like the in the Christian Bible, it says, "Where there are two or more of them gathered in my name, there I
Mhm.
am in the midst of them." So Krishna is always there, especially when you're chanting his names. And so we invited all kinds of people, to our different faith leaders. And so we'd have like Rabbi Gelberman come in from New York, a Jewish guy, and then we'd have a zikr, the Sikh. You ever heard of Sikh religion? It's
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
they have a thing called zikr. It's congregational chanting. They all get in a circle and they chant
Mhm.
Allah's names.
Oh.
And so, it doesn't matter what name Christian is smart enough. He knows a different name and it's a different language. He has hundreds of millions of names. So I was just telling, the thing that we're going to read today is about the holy name, actually,
Mhm.
coincidentally, which is perfect because we just got done with this 24-hour kirtan. Uh, there's nothing but the name in the entire world, I think. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that. Let me just share the screen here. That's all you need is the holy name. Okay, we're on the fifth text of the Nectar of Instruction. I was just reading when this first came out in the 70s. It came out in like 1975, and there was a personal servant of Prabhupada's who wrote a series of books. It is called a Transcendental Diary, and those are still available. but I'm reading. He was a personal servant. He just kind of fell into that service. There was nobody to do Prabhupada's massages every day. And so he was like the only one that could do it. And so he started doing that, and they kept him on for like over a year, like almost a year and almost 2 years,
Mhm.
1975 through 1976. And he was talking about the Nectar of Instruction. And they only printed like 10,000 copies in 1975. And Prabhupada wondered why they didn't print more. He said, well, the devotees thought that this was mostly for devotees, so it wouldn't be for mass distribution. But actually, Prabhupada said, no, tell them that the BBT, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust in LA, tell them to print immediately at least 100,000 copies, because this is for mass distribution. Because this is Rupa Goswami's book, it's a very basic book, and I mean it has the core of Krishna consciousness in it because it's meant for instruction about how to be a devotee, the different steps of becoming a devotee, and it was meant for mass distribution. So I don't know how many copies they eventually printed, but that's what Prabhupada said about this book. So we're on text five right now. I'll read the couple of first uh, sentences here with the Bengali and stuff, and then um, Alyssa, since you're so expert, you can read the next paragraph, and you're the first on. It's first come, first serve. So,
Can you make it bigger? Right now we're just seeing like I don't know if maybe I need to do something. Hold on.
are you looking from your phone?
No. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, I got it. I got it. I got
Oh,
it.
okay, yeah, it should be full screen almost, except for the little boxes that we're the Zoom boxes. Okay, so when Srila Satyaraj Khan, a great devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, asked the Lord how a Vaishnava could be recognized, the Lord replied, Prabhu kahe anirmukha suni ekabara, Krishna nam se puji, streta sabakara. You notice that's a rhyming couplet as well. All of the verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita are rhyming couplets. And the devotee who wrote that book was almost 100 years old. He could barely even write. But somehow or other, he wrote the entire book in rhyming couplets. So the translation is if one hears a person say even once the word Krishna, that person should be accepted as the best man out of the common group. Chaitanya Charitamrita 15:106. Lord Chaitanya Prabhu continued, Ataiva yanar muke eke Krishna nam se tas Vaishnavakari tahara saman. Okay, go ahead, Alyssa.
One who is interested in chanting the holy name of Krishna or who by practice likes to chant Krishna's names should be accepted as a Vaishnava and offered respects as such, at least within one's mind. One of our friends, a famous English musician, has become attracted to chanting the holy names of Krishna, and even in his records, he has several times mentioned the holy name of Krishna.
Let me
Uh,
stop right there.
Is that George
You know
Harrison?
who that is?
It's George Harrison.
Yeah.
a famous English
You might
musician.
be young, but you weren't born yesterday, so you know that.
Right. I well, whatever. I did really like one of his records that came out in the 80s. Just
Really? Oh, they're all good.
yeah.
Uh,
Maybe it was the 90s. I don't know. I mean, it could have been the late 80s or the early 90s. I don't know.
I like the one that living in the material world,
Oh.
living in the
Well,
material.
this was not like a spirituality record. This was like something they played on MTV.
Well, they played. I mean, you know what the best album that he ever put out? The number one record in 1970 was "All Things Must Pass." That was his solo album,
Oh.
and that was the one with "My Sweet Lord," which Prabhupada is referencing here.
Oh.
And Prabhupada actually taught him the mood of separation in order to actually teach him how to relish those mellows. And he also, I mean, because you can tell by the lyrics of that song, I really want to see you. I really want to be with you. I really want to see you, Lord, but it takes so long. That's like a mood of separation. It's actually pretty advanced understanding. And Prabhupada kind of like coached him in that. But the way he did it, the way he presented Christian consciousness, even though all his friends were kind of like criticizing him and stuff, he said, "Why are you into this? These crazy people with shaved heads running around, with their boom booms and their ding dings." Actually, Malati produced a record with him.
Oh,
The Govinda prayers that are sung every morning when the deities are open.
yeah.
He played. That's actually they can't play it on YouTube or on Facebook because it's banned. It's got copyright infringement because of Apple Records. But she played the gong at the end of that song. It goes bong. They had a big gong in the studio, but she was there and
Wait, are
like,
you talking about the one that's just like Govinda
yeah,
Jaya?
Govinda Madi Prusham Tamaham.
They
But
have it on YouTube.
they play it on YouTube, but not on Facebook live streaming.
Oh,
They don't have the
okay.
rights to it.
Is that Malati singing?
No, that's actually Yamuna Devi. And Prabhupada wanted that. Loved that song so much. He wanted that song on all the temples for all the great deity greetings when after he heard that the first time. And some brahmacharis were saying, "Yo, that's a women singing. You shouldn't like listen to women." Prabhupada said, "No, no, this is devotee. You don't." Like all these brahmacharis are like, they got their big beads, I hate women. I don't want to be any near them, I can't listen to them, every time I see a woman, I want to kill her, it's like a big macho thing. They're just trying to protect their spiritual creeper. But the thing is, there's sometimes like an aversion is just the opposite side of attraction,
Right.
so actually they're attached to women, but they just want to, uh, they want to say that they're against it. They're just neophytes. They don't know. But Prabhupada loved that song, and even though she lives there, even in New Vrindavan, they don't play that portion of it on Facebook when the deities are opening because it's got copyright.
Oh, you mean when they're filming in the
Yeah,
morning?
they film that. It goes through mypur.tv and they stream it on Facebook through their official New Vrindavan page.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Malti is,
She grabbed my face today.
she
I was
grabbed
like,
your face.
yeah, I was like, hi. I was like, hey, Manatee, it's Alyssa. You remember me? And she's like, oh,
She's 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 such a staunch devotee. I mean, she's been around. She was actually there from the very beginning,
mm,
um, with her husband. Her husband is the one that introduced Prabhupada, introduced George Harrison. She was one of the pioneers in England. They both went over there. And you know, and Prabhupada asked Shamsundar to ask George Harrison for a donation to print the Krishna book because they were behind. And it's a funny story because he was at an art studio, this sculptor in outside of London. It was raining really hard. And it was toward the end of the evening, and Shamsundar was there, Malati's ex-husband, and he he didn't want to ask him, but Prabhupada was insistent, just drop my name, just say, Prabhupada said he'd like you to help out. So he showed him the pictures, the beautiful pictures of the Krishna book, and he said, well, Prabhupada would like to help in this production because they owed back pay from all the Back to Godhead magazines that they were distributing back then. And they couldn't go ahead with the Krishna book, these beautiful, big, huge books with silver covers back then. You couldn't go ahead with that printing unless they paid for the entire Bhagavad Gita balance. And so, he was just about to ask him that question. It was raining really hard and lightning struck the building and all the lights went out. Just when he asked that question, and then the lights went out momentarily, and then they came back on again after about a minute or two. And when the lights went back on again, George Harrison was grinning from ear to ear. And of course, he he gave him like $10,000 or $15,000 for that first printing of the Krishna book.
that
And
was before
yeah.
he was a devotee or while he was a devotee?
Who? George Harrison?
Yeah.
Oh no, he met with Prabhupada several times.
Okay, so he already knew.
He knew Prabhupada,
Okay.
and of course, like Shamasunder was cultivating him, and because he knew he was like in with all the musicians. He's the one that actually arranged that mantra rock dance with the Grateful Dead in San Francisco in 1967. Malti arranged that too.
Um,
Malti got Moby Grape to join. That was another 60s band in the Bay Area. That's like these guys, before even the Grateful Dead got famous, they arranged this thing, and then like Prabhupada was chanting there. Timothy Leary wasn't there, but another LSD guru, his name was Owsley. I mean, everybody was tripping in that event, but they were also chanting Hare Krishna, but they were going crazy. It was Jefferson Airplane and Big Brother and the Holding Company, was Janis Joplin's old band, and you know, Prabhupada was personal servant was my spiritual master who was trying to, kind of like keep an eye on Prabhupada because he wasn't in great health. Even in 1967, um, he was like straining himself during the kirtan because it was a big, rock dance, and so, and also, what's his name? Allen Ginsberg was there. He was a big celebrity back then.
oh yeah.
He was like a beat poet in New York City, But anyway, he walked out the back of that venue with my spiritual master, and he looked at my spiritual master and he said, "This is no place for a brahmachari." In other words, for a celibate student, because there's all these like half-naked girls that are like,
Sure, sure. That makes sense.
and they're all tripping on acid. Everybody was on drugs because acid was actually legal back then.
It was legal.
It was
What?
legal. It didn't get out. It wasn't made illegal until like 1968.
Oh, when people caught on.
Yeah, when the government actually found out what it was doing. But anyway, that was George Harrison, um, that sponsored that, and that's what Prabhupada's talking about in this particular paragraph. Go on, keep reading.
All right, all right.
Uh,
So, at his home, he offers respect to pictures of Krishna and also to the preachers of Krishna consciousness. In all regards, he has a very high estimation for Krishna's name and Krishna's activities. Therefore, we offer respects to him without reservation, for we are actually seeing that this gentleman is advancing gradually in Krishna consciousness. Such a person should always be shown respect. The conclusion is that anyone who is trying to advance in Krishna consciousness by regularly chanting the holy name should always be respected by Vaishnavas. On the other hand, we have witnessed that some of our contemporaries, who are supposed to be great preachers, have gradually fallen into the material conception of life because they have failed to chant the holy name of the Lord.
yeah, he's talking about some of his godbrothers that had split away from what his spiritual master really wanted to do, which was preach, and Prabhupada was practically the only one who executed his order and came to the United States and started this movement. And a lot of them were envious of Prabhupada's success. And they had big temples and everything, but they weren't really pleasing the spiritual master. And unless you can please the spiritual master, you can't even chant. So that's why they couldn't chant because they were not really executing the instructions of the guru, who was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Prabhupada's spiritual master. He told him, go to the West. Why don't you? As soon as he met him, he was a college student back in 1932 on the top of a roof in Calcutta. He said, You two are so intelligent young men. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message all over the world?" And they were taken aback because they were like followers of Gandhi at the time. They were
Yeah.
wearing cutty cloth and everything. And he kind of challenged him because he felt he had to say something. He said, "Well, who'll listen to Lord Chaitanya's movement if you're still under subjugation by England?" And Bhaktisiddhanta said, "These things are not important." He completely smashed him, you know, and he was very impressed by him. He said, the most important thing is Lord Chaitanya's Mahaprabhu's movement and his message and his Sankirtan movement. And so that stuck with him for the rest of his life. and he tried to make some money and then preach. He was always helping the devotees. But toward the end of his life, when he was 69 years old, he turned 70. He was as old as I am now, and that's pretty old. Crossing the ocean, came up to Butler, Pennsylvania, uh, and that in 1965. And so that was the beginning of his execution of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's mission. But that's why he's saying, some of the devotees, his god brothers they didn't help him at all. He came with nothing, they didn't give him any help. But unfortunately, if you don't please, there's one verse in the Guru Vastakam prayers that we say every morning, the Samsara prayers. By the mercy of the spiritual master, um, you can make advancement. And if you can't, if without the mercy of the spiritual master, nobody can make advancement. So
Mhm.
that's why Prabhupada, it was very, very, because he executed the spiritual master's mission, he said, I don't have any good qualities, but because I've tried to follow the example and the mission of my spiritual master, therefore, that is the only credit that I have. He's very humble. But Zoe, do you want to read something here?
Yep. Okay.
Read while the giving instructions to Sanatan.
Uh, well, giving instruction to Sanata Goswami, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu divided devotional service into three categories. Shastra Yukti, Nahi Jani, Dardra, Sardavan, Madhyama, Adhikari, Se Maha, Bhagyavan.
Yeah, good job.
Oh,
Hey,
a person whose conclusive knowledge of the sastras is not very strong, who has developed firm faith in chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and who is also undeterred in the execution of his prescribed devotional service, should be considered Madhyama Adhikari. Such a person is very fortunate. A Madhyama Adhikari is a Shraddhavan, a staunchly faithful person. He is actually a candidate for further advancement in devotional service. Therefore, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said, Shadan Jana Haya Bhakti Adhikari Utama Madhyama Kanishta Shraddha Anursari. One becomes qualified as a devotee on the elementary platform, the intermediate platform, and the highest platform of devotional service, according to the development of his Shrita, faith.
Shraddha.
Again, Shraddha, faith. Again, in Chaitanya Charmata Madhya, it is said, Shraddhe Sabde Vishvase Kahe Sudra Nishkaya Krishna Bhakti Kali Sarva Karma Karta Haya.
You want to
By
read the next one, Alyssa?
yeah,
Yeah. By rendering transcendental service to Krishna, one automatically performs all subsidiary activities. This confident, firm faith, favorable to the discharge of devotional service, is called Shraddha. Shraddha, faith in Krishna, is the beginning of Krishna consciousness. Faith means strong faith. The words of Bhagavad Gita are authoritative instructions for faithful men, and whatever Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita is to be accepted as it is without interpretation. This way, this was the way Arjuna accepted Bhagavad Gita. After hearing Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna told Krishna, Sarvam etad ritam manye yan mam vadasi Keshava. Oh Krishna, I totally accept as truth all that you have told me.
Shraddha, that's very important in devotional service. There's one saying that says, um, Shraddha, or um, devotional service, it means faith in something sublime, faith in something sublime. The sublime part is Krishna. And so if we have strong faith in that and we continue on the path and we just accept everything as it is, like Prabhupada said about the Bhagavad Gita, it's not that we're manufacturing anything. This is the words of Krishna as coming down from Arjuna to the disciplic succession from Arjuna himself, because that whole succession was spoken originally to the sun god hundreds of millions of years ago on the sun planet. But for some reason,
Wait, like the sun in our solar system or a different
the
sun?
sun in our solar system, there's a sun god. His name is Vivishwan, and it came down from Vivishwan to his son Ikshvaku. So there's even living entities on the sun. They just have bodies that are acclimated to that climate. There's bodies even in underwater, and there's, the soul is not material. It can't be burned by any fire. It can't be withered by wind. It can't be wet, moistened by water. It's like beyond that. So, but like living entities can adapt to any particular situation. Like at the bottom of the ocean, there's volcanic activity in the Marianas Trench, which is very deep, and there's volcanoes at the bottom of that ocean. And they had in the 70s or 80s, they had a experimental submarine called Alvin, and they took it to the bottom of the sea. And they wrote about this in the Back to Guided magazine. And the scientists there, just on a lark, they decided to take some samples, even though because the water was like intensely pressurized, and it was like 600 degrees. 600 degrees right near the vent of the volcano. And so they took a piece of some water and put it under a microscope, and they saw living entities that were thriving. And once the pressure came down and got colder, they all died. But then once the pressure was brought up and the heat was brought up, they started thriving. So somehow or other, the amino acids in their cells didn't break down. I mean, at 600 degrees is almost, a paper would burst into flames at that temperature. But somehow or other, they acclimated their bodies. There's living entities everywhere in the universe. It
I
says
thought the sun god was Manu.
no, that's the original progenitor. Manu is the first progenitor of mankind. That comes from the word Manu. It means the first progenitor. There's different Manus. There's hundreds of Manus, and in each avatar, in each yuga or age, I think we're in the Vaivashvata Manu era right now, and he lives for millions of years. But there's other Manus, and they're actually the original progenitors on whatever planet they appear in. Usually they're talking about the Earth when they talk about Vaivashvata Manu.
So first it was spoken to the sun god.
Sun God. The Bhagavad Gita was spoken to the sun god hundreds of millions of years ago, and he passed it on to his son Ikshvaku. It's there in the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay. He passed it to his son, and then what?
And then they pass it down to all the kings and the disciplic succession. But Krishna told Arjuna, he said, somehow or other, the succession was broken and the message was lost. And therefore, I'm speaking it to you again right now because you're my friend and my devotee. The Bhagavad Gita can only be spoken to someone who is friendly with Krishna and devoted to Krishna. And so, Krishna spoke it to Arjuna to start a whole new disciplic succession because this knowledge kind of dissipates after some time, because it's not, the people just forget it and it's no longer in society anymore. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
when rumor goes around, and by the time it's for the hundredth person, they just got it all wrong. I guess that's the way it works. But he said the disciplic succession, the knowledge was lost, and therefore I'm speaking it again to you. But
Okay.
this is exactly
So
what
it was revived 5,000 years ago.
that was spoken to a Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years ago. But the sun god, he appeared millions of years ago. And Arjuna asked him, hey, Krishna, you say sun god is superior to you. How, he said, how can you say that you are his contemporary? And he said, I remember all my, many, many lives you and I have passed. I remember all of them, but you cannot. Because Krishna is God. He remembers all his past lives. So he spoke the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god hundreds of millions of years ago. And then he spoke it again because it's eternal knowledge. It doesn't change. It's the same
Yeah.
throughout all the ages. So, did you read that 214?
I think it's my turn.
Yeah, It's your turn, Zoe, right? Oh, you spoke that you did
Read.
a paragraph, right, Alyssa?
No, no, she just read.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, go
Right?
ahead. Go ahead. Start
I
with the
don't know.
correct way of understanding because that's the one that was read last.
Start where?
This is
Wow, this is the correct way of understanding Bhagavad Gita, and this is called Shraddha. It is not that one accepts a portion of Bhagavad Gita according to his own whimsical interpretations and then rejects another portion. This is not Shraddha. Shraddha means accepting the instructions of Bhagavad Gita in their totality, especially the last instruction, Sarva Dharmam Parityagya Mam Ekam Saranam Vraja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. When one becomes completely faithful in regard to this instruction, one's strong faith becomes the basis for advancing in spiritual life.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. That's the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. Once you see that the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna Consciousness 101. When you understand and follow the surrender part, then you're starting on your path of Krishna consciousness. But after that, you get the graduate study is the Srimad Bhagavatam. When you understand that yes, my duty is to surrender to Krishna. So what are the activities? How can I serve?
Mhm.
So the Bhagavatam is all about that. And then the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that's the postgraduate study of Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya um, talked about the highest realization of Krishna consciousness, totally selfless and totally renounced. And he was actually following in the footsteps of the gopis, who were the greatest devotees of Krishna ever. They had no thought for their own pleasure or anything selfish. They were totally absorbed in just pleasing Krishna. So Lord Chaitanya, even though he was a strict sannyasi, he didn't have anything to do with women. Women had to pay obeisances to him from afar, and he was very strict in that regard. But he worshipped the gopis, and so it says that devotees. He called himself Gopi Bhartu Padakamalaya or Das Das Anudas. He said, I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis because they're the ones that please Krishna most. And if you please Radharani, then you get the pleasure of Krishna because Krishna is completely controlled by Radharani. She, if she says, Krishna, there's a very nice devotee, please accept him, and Krishna accepts that person. And that's why Prabhupada, when the holy men would come to his father's house, they would feed them. It's a Vedic custom. You're supposed to feed the sadhus that come to the house. And and Prabhupada's father would say, please, please just bless my son that Radharani will be pleased with him. Because if you please Radharani, then you get Krishna. So Zoe, you want to read the next paragraph?
Okay.
When one?
When one fully engages in chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, he gradually realizes his own spiritual identity. Unless one faithfully chants Hare Krishna mantra, Krishna does not reveal himself. Sivamukhe hi Jivadu Sivayam Eva Sparute Ada. We cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by any artificial means. We must engage faithfully in the service of the Lord. Such service begins with the tongue, Sivamukhe hi Jivadu, which means that we should always chant the holy names of the Lord and accept Krishna Prasada. We should not chant or accept anything else. When this process is faithfully followed, the Supreme Lord reveals himself to the devotee.
Yeah, you can also chant. If you control the tongue, it says in the first verse of this whole book, first text, it says one can control, the tongue is the first sense equipment, and all of the senses are in a straight line. You got the tongue, the belly, and the genitals. If you can control the tongue, you can control everything else. And so the way we control the tongue is by accepting Mahaprasad and accepting and chanting Krishna's names and reading Krishna's pastimes like we're doing now. And that way, what can control the tongue? And it's just a simple process. And the Lord is very pleased when he sees the devotees discussing amongst one another about his names and in the 24-hour kirtan or discussing in the Bhagavad Gita or this book here, he says they're very enthusiastic. The devotees are very enthusiastic to enlighten one another and talk about Krishna. And he reveals himself, just like it says in the Bible, where there's two or more, they're gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. So Krishna accepts that service because, not that he needs it himself, but because he wants to reciprocate with all his parts and parcels. We're kind of like here in this prison house of the material world, which kind of sucks because we have to accept birth, death, old age, and disease. But he wants us to go back to home, back to Godhead, so we can enjoy his pastimes eternally. Wouldn't that be nice? And then we wouldn't have to stay here in this material world.
I have,
So,
I have a question. Just
sure,
I can when we talk about like Vedic culture and Vedic knowledge, it's in reference to the Vedas, right?
right.
So how long ago are we talking, and are we only talking about what we know of today as India? Because like I was reading Bhakti Tirtha Swami's um you know his pastimes in Africa, and like he said that Vedic culture and Vedic civilization was all over the world at one
Well,
point.
yeah. It's not just confined to India. Um, the Vedas means wisdom. And the Vedas have been in extent for millions of years. And in fact, the Bhagavatam, it says it exists on other planets. And so it's like the Vedas, see the Vyasadeva, before the Vyasadeva in 5,000 years ago, even during 5,000 years ago, this knowledge was passed down from guru to disciple, and people were so intelligent back then that the disciple would remember it. But he wrote it down. He had some help. Ganesh broke off his tusk and he wrote it with his tusk. And he wrote the all of the Vedas. Veda means wisdom. And Krishna says Veda Vyas is actually an incarnation of Vishnu. He is the literary incarnation of Vishnu. And so that's why we honor the representative of Vyasadeva. He sits on a Vyasasan, the seat of Vyas, because he is the compiler of the Vedas. And Krishna says because he's not different from Krishna, he wrote the Vedas. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta Krit Vedavit Eva Chaham. I'm the knower. I'm the compiler of the Vedas. Nobody can make up the Vedas. This is eternal knowledge, and it's only coming from Krishna, nowhere else. That's why Prabhupada said when this Bhagavad Gita, which is part of the Vedas, it's part of the Bhagavad Gita is the spoken word of Krishna. And then the Bhagavatam, it wasn't spoken by Krishna, but it was written about Krishna. So that is also the Vedas. And there's also the Puranas. The Puranas are like histories of the world.
Oh,
And the
and
Bhagavad,
they all kind of were recorded around the same time,
yeah,
5,000.
well, Vyasadeva wrote all of the Vedas, and he delegated some of his disciples. See, Narada Muni was his spiritual master, and he was kind of like discontented with the way it was coming out. He was very dissatisfied with his own writing. He wrote the Atharva Veda, the Rig Veda, the Sama Veda, and the all the Vedas. There are four divisions, and he delegated the his disciples to, or his disciples to explain all these different Vedas. And then he wrote the Puranas too. There's the Vishnu Purana, there's the Padma Purana, and there's all different kinds of Puranas, and they're in different modes of nature. Like there's a mode of ignorance, there's a mode of passion, there's a mode of goodness. The Vishnu Purana is mostly in the mode of goodness, and the Padma Purana. I read that. The Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses. The Padma Purana, my mentor, audiobook mentor, he said, I'd really like you to read the Padma Purana. That's like I said, it's a history. And that's a really long book. It's got 55,000 verses. So I read that. He said he only knew one person that has read the entire book. And he said it would be very good if you could read the whole thing. So that's in my audiobook collection too. It's actually shorter than the Bhagavatam because it doesn't have any purports, but there's some really interesting pastimes in that book.
Mhm.
Like at one point, Radha, uh, Arjuna, Krishna's friend, becomes a gopi.
Mhm.
So it's really amazing. But I guess we're going to have to stop here because it's 45 minutes going on 50. Did anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I was kind of had a thought earlier. Well, I was thinking about souls, spirit souls, and we're kind of talking about this on this about, souls leaving the body, finding a new body. I just wonder, we know how bodies get created, right? That's biological facts there. But like, is there a finite number of souls, or do souls
Oh,
get lost?
there is a finite number of souls, but they're all part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. It's
Mm.
like the sparks of a fire. We're qualitatively equal with the Supreme Person. In other words, we have all the qualities of the Supreme, but only in minute quantity. So we're infinitesimal, and Krishna is infinite. So, but the number of souls is always the same. That the soul never dies. He doesn't come into existence. He's not born. He doesn't die. He always exists.
So there's not new souls.
No, there's no new souls. They're
Okay.
all existing all the time.
Okay, so there might be people that are maybe like behind in their level of consciousness, but that doesn't mean they're a new soul.
No, yeah, they're all created. They're all originally from Krishna, and we've come down here to this material world because we wanted to enjoy separately from Krishna. That was our mistake. And that's what my spiritual, one of my mentors, David Marita Swami, he's a guru now in New Zealand. He said, if you look in the mirror in the morning and you see a material body, you know you've made a mistake. So it's like,
That's what Dave Ramri. Wait, is Dave Ramrita Swami your guru?
well, he kind of took me under his wing because he came from the Eastern Bloc of the communist countries back in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
He was listening to my spiritual master's book, Eternal Love, and he said, "Man, this is really powerful. Something's going to happen to this guy, you know." So, but he was so inspired, he came to New Vrindavan and he immediately made him temple president. He was temple president for a while, and then he was put in charge of all the Sankirtan devotees that were out collecting, and I used to drive him around. But I loved his lectures. They're so funny. I mean, he's really brilliant. I mean,
Oh my God, he's got one of the best books ever, Searching for Vedic Civilization.
yeah, I haven't read that one, but he also put out another book called uh, Hiding an Unnatural Happiness. Have you ever seen that one?
No, this one that I'm talking about in search of, I know, let me grab mine too. I have to show it to you. In search of, oh, searching for Vedic India.
Searching for Vedic India. Oh, okay. See, here's the one that he wrote.
Hiding in unnatural happiness. Wow.
Yeah, that was mostly for like literary, like college students. It talks about like how it's kind of interesting. It's really relevant to today, even though it was written like 10 years ago. He predicted that the democracy would start failing all over the world.
Oh.
Sure.
Oh.
Dude, this is the one that I got at the Pittsburgh Kirtan Center, and
Oh,
Oh,
I
I haven't seen that one. I'm gonna have to
I
read.
remember when you got that.
yeah, it's like this is the one where like it's really it's dense. A lot of people, this is really not beach reading for people.
Well, he
Uh
was a philosophical. I mean, he was a Yale graduate.
yeah, I
He's
know.
from Detroit, and he actually, when he came to New Vrindavan, his father came there once, and from Detroit, he lived in Detroit, but his father really liked the cheesecake in New Vrindavan, and so he drove all the way. He liked that cheesecake so much he drove all the way from Detroit just to get the cheesecake again.
Oh my God.
So he wasn't a vegan.
Yeah.
Vegan vegan, I want cheesecake.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, for sure. But
All right.
anyway, thank you so much. And yeah, I'll give you a copy of this.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So do you think that's more like
I've got a whole case of these.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Because
So I
actually, he took me under his wing. I started transcribing his lectures in 1988. I had a little laptop that didn't even have a floppy drive. You know what a floppy drive is,
yeah,
Alyssa?
I remember we used to call it a floppy disk.
Yeah, floppy disk.
Yeah.
But it didn't. It had random access memory, and it didn't have enough for a whole book. And so I called up Hewlett Packard. And I asked him how much would it be to put an external hard disk drive in it, like attach it to the serial port. And they said that'd be $600. And so I didn't buy one. But that's how long ago I'm dating myself now, But
Yeah.
I wrote a whole book called Hiding in Unnatural, or not hiding in, it was called the Cutting the Knot of Material Existence. And he would give lectures, and I printed that book from a devotee that was used to live in New Vrindavan, who was in charge of the press, Palace Press, but he moved back to Vermont, and he printed that book for me in his little press that he had up there, and I distributed it to all the Sankirtan devotees back then, and because I just really liked his style, he was a brilliant, uh, talker, and he was very funny.
Is he no longer living?
No, he lives in New Zealand.
He's in New Zealand. Yeah. So
He's
I was,
actually a guru
yeah.
in ISKCON.
It said he graduated from Yale in 1972.
Yeah. When he was first met the devotees, he was sitting on his couch and his girlfriend was there, and he just was reading Prabhupada's books, and it hit him like a one of those Acme anvils on his head. It was so heavy. And so, so he kind of like split up with his girlfriend at that point. And but he was taken aback by Prabhupada's books even back in the early 70s.
Yeah.
He was and he still is a leader in ISKCON. He's black bodied devotee.
Yeah. 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 Genius. The guy's a genius,
He's a
really.
genius, and it's really heavy writing. He actually predicted a whole bunch of things that have come true. He was saying in the 80s that there'd be an economic collapse, back before the economic collapse in 2009 or 8, and he was just like about 10 years before it happened. But he's very brilliant. He can see what's happening in society, and he said that the experiment of democracy is kind of failing all over the world. People are becoming more authoritarian, as
Right.
obvious.
Right.
And somebody asked Bernie Sanders the other day, how can we stop this authoritarian push? I actually read an article. You guys might want to check it out. I put it today. He writes something. Tom Hartman writes something every day. I consider him and his wife prophets. He was very much interested in spirituality ever since he was a teenager, but he was like in the SDS. He was a hippie and, kind of a counterculture guy, back then. But he wrote an article about uh, tyranny, the 14 steps of tyranny. And this is like how America is becoming an authoritarian state now. It's going away from democracy because it's too complicated. And they're actually taking over. And it's very, very scary what's happening in America right now. I know, Zoe, you are kind of concerned about it, right? I think it's the most inopportune time for a crazy person like Trump to start a war
Wow.
because he wants so much attention. He doesn't care how he gets it. He had a parade
That's that's
and it
why he's gonna
wasn't,
kill
it,
everybody.
it didn't it didn't really go so well, and so he saw Bibi getting all this attention from his war in with Iran,
So
and
he
so he
said,
said, "I want some of that." And so he said, "Okay, I'll bomb him." Before he was like an isolationist, but now he wants attention. He's like Dracula. Dracula wants blood.
well, that he's a narcissist, and
He
that's all
wants
narcissists
he has
want.
an insatiable thirst for attention, and
That's a
so he's
narcissist.
actually insane. You know.
It's a narcissist. They're insane.
So anyway, it's going to happen, whatever's going to happen. But that article, you can check it out. I made a slideshow video, and with his wife writes a song that's inspired by the article every single day of the week. Every weekday they put out a daily take and a daily song, and I make a video out of it because he's a spiritual personality, and he actually really understands what's going on in the world and how to stop it. Like they asked Bernie Sanders, how can we stop this authoritarian takeover? But anyway, you can check it out. It's on the Coexist Kirtan Center Facebook group page. I put it up there today. It's
Okay.
only about maybe 17 minutes long or so, but
Okay.
listen. Anyway, thank you very much. It's
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you.
Talk to you on Tuesday, hopefully. Krishna willing.
Haribol.
Haribo.